You, Owen. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Traffic Safety Committee. It is December 10th, 7:01 p.m. I'm just going to read into the minutes our little script here. This open meeting of the Traffic Safety Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law on March 29th, 2023. All members of the Traffic Safety Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The act allows the Traffic Safety Committee to meet entirely remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed in the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will, as always, feature public comment. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Rachel Armstrong.
Here.
Chris DeCantis.
Here.
Brian Cole.
Here.
Kate Gerard.
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Josh Van Houten.
Here.
Scott Charpentier.
Present.
Okay. And with that, we will call to order the meeting. Scott, thank you for sending out the amended meeting agenda. I saw the email that came across, and I just want to check really quick. There are 2 attendees, so, and somebody just raised their hand. So, this is for the heavy commercial vehicle exclusion for Hudson and Boundary Street. So I'm going to bring in Kyle Murphy.
Tom McDonald is there.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Please, for the record, state your name and address.
Sure, my name is Kyle Murphy and I live at 409 Hudson Street.
Okay. So let me just check something. Are you the person who sent in the email?
Yes, I was.
Okay, perfect. So I don't know if everyone got a chance to read the email.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Yes,
sorry
sir.
to interrupt. Can you bring
Go
in Sergeant McDonald, please?
Oh, is Sergeant McDonald there too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, Sergeant McDonald, I didn't see you out there.
All good.
Okay. Now everyone's here. So, heavy vehicle restriction for Hudson and Boundary, is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know what's within what's feasible. Obviously I live on Hudson Street and that's that's why I feel like my claim is strongest there. And I know that Boundary Street can be a little bit complicated because of Marlboro and Northborough kind of sharing the roadway there.
Right. And I think, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, that's where the problem lies with the heavy vehicle exclusion. We can only control the streets within Northborough.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't have a heavy vehicle exclusion end in the middle of a street. A truck would have nowhere to go once they got there, right?
One of the other struggles with the heavy commercial vehicle exclusion is in order to implement one, you need to have an accepted alternate route. When that alternate route goes into another community, you need to have written approval from that community to route the truck traffic in that across their roadways. I've been municipal employment for 12 years and a consultant for a couple decades before that, and I have never heard of one town saying, "Yeah, please put your trucks on my roads instead of yours." And we've asked Marlboro in the past, not for Boundary Street, but we asked them for Bartlett Street, and they were not shy in responding negatively quickly.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's sort of, that the problem with that area is you've got both streets that go into another town. So while I appreciate, and trust me, I live on right on Whitney Street.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I see it all the time, and I actually have the same problem here, is that,
Mm.
we were able to do one only because we were able to divert the traffic off onto Barefoot. But without that, and even then, from on Whitney from Barefoot to the Berlin town line, there is not a heavy vehicle exclusion. It's only from Barefoot to the center of town.
Are there other remedies or other things that can be done in terms of signage or posting, in terms of increasing it at the very least the safety on that road?
Yeah, I can tell you, I've gone down Boundary Street many times and come to a semi heading in the other direction. And, especially where it narrows by that trail, that can get really scary. I just don't know, Scott, I don't know if there's anything, any ideas anyone has? Go ahead, Rachel.
So Kyle, my question is, do you notice that it's Amazon, or do you notice that it's a particular company that seems to be on Hudson Street? Is there a business we could reach out to potentially?
I think it runs the gamut, but I would say I feel like it's from my desk. Actually, I look at this intersection from my desk. I work remote, and I feel it's a Dewey Pile, FedEx Freight, and they're obviously coming off of Bartlett Street. I know why people come through here. It's when I bought the house, I knew that this is a reality. I just feel like with those hubs growing in terms of significance, like there's just a lot more volume of trucks than I remember when I moved into town, which was 2015. Obviously, pandemic kind of accelerated some of those shifts.
Yeah, I mean, if it's those trucks, they shouldn't be going on Hudson Street. They should be going down Cedar Hill. I mean, there's a ton of signage there, so that's frustrating.
The only other thing I would potentially mention, and this really just applies to nighttime, there's no street lighting around here. This intersection is very, very dark. And I think it's really clear now in wintertime with it being so dark. The visibility is just very, very off. I actually have to go across the street to get my mail because my box is across the street. And the number of close kind of calls just with regular traffic, I just think that area, that intersection might benefit from just being better lit, at the very least. So that, when I see people turning onto Boundary, I've seen too many close calls at this point, just from people taking the turn wide. And I've seen my share of accidents here. So anything that could be done just to hopefully provide greater visibility for drivers would be appreciated.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not sure, Scott, if there's something we can do about that.
So all the streetlights in Northborough are owned by National Grid. I can certainly reach out. Their goal and objective has been to illuminate intersections first,
Hmm.
not necessarily tangent sections of roadway along residential areas. That's really not their goal. I can reach out to National Grid and request them to evaluate that intersection to see if it warrants a streetlight. I know. I've communicated with the resident that lives directly across. They put that little stone wall, the little block wall up.
Yep.
Their tree looks like it's been hit about a dozen times. Um, they've had concerns about that intersection for many years, and we've done what we could to remediate it. It's a struggle for sure. We can reach out to A. Dewey Pile politely. They're somewhat of a locally owned business, and just ask them, is there an alternate route to Boundary Street? But I don't know if that's going to bear any fruit, really.
Yeah. I think the other thing, Scott, I know it doesn't increase the size of the road, but that stump that's sitting there on the side of Boundary Street that juts out into the road,
Mm.
is there anything that can be done with that to say cut that back maybe or something?
Which side of the bridge is that on? Ours or theirs?
I
I think
think
it's ours.
yeah, it's ours. It's so right as if you're coming from Hudson, right, you go over the bridge and right before the entrance to the trailhead on the right, on the opposite side, there's a huge stump. It's probably a good, 2.5 feet in diameter.
That's
Just stick,
Marlboro.
Oh, is that Marlboro?
Yeah, our
Yeah,
our
that
our
side's Marlboro.
roadway ends right at the pavement joint. So when you turn off of Hudson onto Boundary Street, there's a pavement joint, probably, I don't know, what do you think, Tom? Maybe 150, 200 feet down or something like that?
Yeah, I was gonna say about 100, 150.
Yeah, yeah. So that
Pretty clear mark, like two different pavements line up, and then the whole road, the rest of the way is all in Marlboro. Our town line's literally the edge of Boundary Street.
The edge of
Right.
Boundary Street.
The right,
Okay, that
if you're going
that's
towards if you
right.
come off Hudson, the right hand side is all North Road. That's why Windsor comes off. If you look at a map, it literally comes out of just the town line, like all of Boundary Street. The road is Marlboro.
Yeah, our
Okay.
plow trucks drive through Marlboro to get to Windsor to plow it and then come back through Marlboro back
Yeah.
to town.
So
Okay.
I have a question that sounds naive, I'm sure. But on Cedar Hill, Marlboro paved Cedar Hill and it was, in desperate need of repair, and it was because of Amazon's trucks. So my question is, can we share accident data, Northborough and Marlboro, in that area to potentially work with them to figure out a solution? Because maybe there are accidents that sometimes occur in Marlboro and sometimes occur in Northborough, but when you add them up, it's significant. Is there any way that we can work via either the police department or the DPW? I know it's out there, but
I'm sure me or someone you could reach out to Marlboro for just some accident data, give them like a couple year on Boundary Street, and it'll give them the length. I know a lot of the accidents that we end up there in our town because they're at Hudson and Boundary, like, so we
right.
book those. But then I don't know about, yeah, like at the other end, Millham Road comes in. I forget the other road that forks off. Um,
Helm.
I'm sure Marlboro has data if there's crashes there or how many. It's just like requesting any type of info from us. So you can certainly do that.
One of the challenges with intercommunity infrastructure projects is that one contractor working for two communities is a struggle when it comes to procurement and processing of quantities and payments. The work that Marlboro did on Cedar Hill, that was funded by the state through a MassWorks grant. We actually asked Marlboro if they were willing to extend the project to the intersection, and we would be a co-applicant for the grant money, and Marlboro said no.
Did Marlboro deny the route trucks staying on Cedar Hill and turning left to 495? Is that the one you guys have previously
Yes.
brought to them, Scott?
Yes. Marlboro denied that in writing, and then I asked Westboro about pushing trucks, keeping them onto Lyman and not going to the end of Lyman. And they denied that as well. So we asked Westboro verbally, and they said no. And Marlboro, I think they sent their letter in writing before I even hit my send button.
Is there anything we could do, because that's more of like an industrial area that connects directly to 495 as opposed to sending trucks through our town in that sense?
Everybody does it with zoning. You zone your industrial zones on the limits of your town, and the neighboring communities do as well, so they're contiguous. And the hope is that the truck leaves your industrial zone and goes into somebody else's. Of course, routes change, roads get built, ramps get built, and the GPS sends them where they go. Unfortunately,
Right.
your GPS is the same as mine,
Yep,
as is theirs.
unfortunately.
Yep.
So, Kyle, I'm sort of sorry we can't help more than we can, if that
Yeah,
makes
no,
sense.
no, I appreciate your guys' responsiveness and hearing me out. I mean, obviously, situations evolve. When we moved in here, there weren't many houses even on our street, so things, the community's growing, and I think that's the thing that, I have two young boys, 7 and 8, so I'm constantly thinking about, what this neighborhood will look like in the future if things kind of continue to trend in this direction.
Right. Brian, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The only thing we haven't discussed from Kyle's letter, I don't think, is the sidewalk.
Right. So, Scott, have we reviewed the potential of putting a sidewalk? I know we probably can't do it on Boundary because again, we only have the very.
We could do it on our half of Boundary, I suppose.
Yeah, generally when new sidewalks are constructed, the goal and intent is to provide pedestrian access from a focus or a target area to a destination or close gaps. So Allen Street's a good example. You have sidewalks on East Main, you have sidewalks on Hudson Street, no sidewalk on Allen. That's a gap. It's a gap that logically could be closed by a sidewalk. We have destinations between the two schools, Peasley School on Maple Street and Algonquin. That would be a targeted destination. Pine Haven, huge neighborhood, lots of residents. They don't have sidewalks to get to Times Square and Rockies Plaza, nor do they have sidewalks to get to Lincoln Street Elementary School and that sidewalk system. So those are where you look to spend your infrastructure funds on sidewalks. There are no sidewalks on Hudson Street at Hudson Solomon Pond. There is a sidewalk on Boundary Street Bridge, I believe.
Yes.
But that's a Mass DOT standard. Any bridge you build in Massachusetts, you have a sidewalk on it. Even if it's in the middle of nowhere with nobody around. We have one on School Street over Assabet. There's no sidewalks anywhere near it, but in the event there's ever a sidewalk put in, they make sure there's one on the bridge. Same thing on Allen Street. There's a sidewalk that goes over the Assabet on Allen. Nothing on the other side. So the chances of spending town resources on a sidewalk infrastructure there, as opposed to some of the other priorities I listed, is pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
But I think to Brian's and to Kyle's point, right? This might be a neighborhood. This is an up and coming neighborhood. We may need to just put it on the list of, potentials. I know it's far down the list, and I'm sorry about that, Kyle. But
No worries.
given that there are new houses being built out there, this might be one that, we need to put on the list, whether it's far down the list or whatever. But especially something coming from Boundary down Hudson towards Solomon Pond. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, just is the concern just the traffic itself, or is there any enforcement that we could also help? I know guys used to sit all the time. 380 Hudson on that little stretch was a major hotspot. We'd get cars all the time speeding. Is it just the trucks, like the volume but they're not like speeding or anything like that, right?
I don't, it'd be really hard for them to speed because they got to make that turn.
12th gear.
So it really hasn't been that. It's just nowadays to make that turn, they do a lot of stopping, and there's a lot of already car traffic there. There was a unmanned kind of speed check there because there are some usually late at night people who rev and kind of go crazy on the road. But
right.
I don't know, there was some kind of enforcement, but I don't necessarily think that speeding is the problem on the road.
Okay. I was gonna say, I can add it to our list just as an enforcement thing. They're not gonna jam up trucks just trying to, make a turn and drive through there, but I can add it to our list of spots and have a guy sit there occasionally and just try to aid in that way.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? Well, thank you for your email, Kyle. And we'll definitely keep this in mind going forward. And
excellent. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
No,
all right, take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle.
Okay. Continue on. So Scott and I had the pleasure of sitting in front of the select board for the past couple months and going over the the townwide speed limit as well as the Summer Street HCV. So I don't know if everyone saw the updated questions. They had asked me to sort of expand on the questions for the survey, so I did so. But we got their approval to go ahead with the survey. So Scott, I'm probably going to need somebody, you know, whether David or some, do you guys have a SurveyMonkey account, or how does that usually work? know?
We don't. I know we've had some consultants use theirs, you know, for the downtown revitalization, the master plan implementation. I'd have to figure out how to do an online. I mean, I've never done an online survey. I don't know how to do that.
I know how to do it. It's just I don't know if we have an account, you know, if the town has an account to use, or if I have to use a personal account, or how that works.
I'd have to reach out to Lori. I mean, we can figure out a way to do it, whether it means we have an account or we use a consultant and they just give us access and we pay a small monetary fee to, you know, kind of filter it through them. You know, the logistics of it, I'll figure out. As far as the content and time frame, I'd look for guidance from the committee on that part.
Right. So, and that's the other thing. So let's assume we're going to get this up and running sometime, probably just after, either between Christmas and New Year's, or just after New Year's. We were sort of talking with the select board about leaving it up and running for about a month, and then collecting the data after that. How does everyone feel about that? Do you think a month is enough time to leave the survey up for people to answer?
Appropriate, and that way it'll give us a chance to talk about it at the next meeting, right? If we put it out the last week of December or first week of January and leave it open for a month, then we can talk about it in February.
Yep.
At our meeting, but we meet once a month, so I think it makes sense to give everybody that much time.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
So we're looking at the end of December through end of
Through the end of
January type
January.
of window?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then we can, you know, then we'll stop it. We'll compile the information and have it ready for our meeting in February. And then we can present those results to the select board, maybe the end of February.
Yeah, our meeting would be February 11th, so I think
Right.
that probably makes sense.
And I think the select board, meeting would be,
I don't think
think
they've
the
set that
17th.
schedule yet.
I think they always go, I think it's always the first and third Monday.
Yep.
So it would probably be like the 17th.
Yep. Or yeah, the 24th, that's a holiday, 17th, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
They've
Yeah,
been
so
having
the
them
24th.
very frequently, so we'll get one later in February.
Yeah. Okay, I think that works. So Scott, why don't you, either if you can reach out to Lori or if you need me to, and let's see if we can get that started.
Yep. I'll take care of the logistics. And one other thing, Mr. Chairman, we talked about having hard copies at the library and senior center as an option. I'm not sure if the committee prefers that or not.
Well, I think that's a good idea.
Excellent idea. I know a lot of people that I talk with at St. Rose that do not use the internet, so I'm sure they
Yeah.
would appreciate that.
Actually, Kate, do you think St. Rose would host some paper copies?
I can certainly find out. I don't see why not. I mean,
Okay.
I'm wondering where they would put them.
I don't know. Put them in the back by the
I can
bulletins.
figure it out. I'll find
I
out
think,
this weekend.
in all
I think that's a
seriousness,
good
I
idea.
think, I
Put a
think,
QR in the bulletin. Who's volunteering?
I'll bring it to coffee and donuts after mass.
There you go.
put a QR in the bulletin. if they're
I
not
feel like
being
that does the
told.
opposite of what we needed to.
Yeah.
Not cool, Kate, not cool.
No,
I-
no.
Too cool, I think. Are there other organizations, in all sincerity, beyond the senior center and the library that we can, poke about this? Hey, would you promote this? Would you tell people to do it? Get out to the community at large, people that aren't necessarily going to be reading the Community Advocate or whatever.
Is
I
there a
think-
way to get it into schools to parents?
That is also a good idea.
Say parents are more inclined to be checking emails and going on the
Well, yeah.
internet.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's fine. Then,
Yeah, but I
we
think-
can see if the teachers or the principals will put something on Parent Square or whatever.
There's
Well, but to
Northborough
Scott's point-
moms and all those Facebook
Yeah,
pages.
yeah.
or-
Yeah, to Scott's point earlier, though, what we can do is we can have a one-pager with a QR code, right? And that can go out to places like the schools and a bulletin board and, maybe a couple restaurants or businesses in town that people can just scan the QR code and get the survey.
We've
Right.
received resistance in the past from utilizing the schools as a mechanism of distribution for general government information. That's I don't believe that would be
Okay.
found acceptable by the school.
Well, let me just
district.
counter and say that we've had teachers and, crossing guards come before this committee demanding that we do something to increase the safety of students walking to school. So I think this is a concern that they would be on board with. This, I don't think this counts
We
as
can-
general government, frankly.
We can ask the question. If they say no, they say no, right? But it
I'll
can't hurt
ask.
to
I wouldn't get
Yep.
my hopes up, but I'll certainly ask.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
If you were to go through a PTO, is that a workaround instead of going to school administration? I mean, you know how they send out sort of announcements.
Sure.
It's been a while since my kids were in elementary school, but
Really, your
Yeah.
social media, Facebook, your
Yeah.
mom's group, your, whatever, all those
things.
social media platforms, I think is probably, the citizenry and their network will probably get it out pretty quickly.
yeah,
But I
the
will, I
select-
will absolutely ask the superintendent, if he finds it acceptable.
And the select board has also offered to use, their pages as well to push this. So, so once we have the link, I think we'll be able to push it out pretty easily to
Yeah,
everybody.
we'll put it on town news. So there'll be a mass email. Everybody who signed up for town news will get it. So anybody who's kind of relatively civic engaged will be aware.
Good. So, if there's nothing else on that, we'll move on. HCVE for Summer Street. So I don't know if everyone remembers, but we had initially not recommended that high commercial vehicle exclusion on Summer Street. The select board decided to take it up and they actually approved it. So it's being sent out to Mass DOT for their approval. And then once they approve it, it'll come back to the select board for a final approval before the signs are put up. So
Do we know how long Mass DOT reviews that for? Is it a 30-day review?
It can be longer.
can be.
Chris, they'll reach out to us if it's getting longer. My guess is that this might be a little longer, just
Yeah.
because of the complications with the intersection. But when it has been longer, they respond to us and say, we'd like another 2 weeks to review, and that's, obviously you allow that.
Okay. Yeah, I think, like you said, it's a little bit tricky with routing traffic to that intersection and the implications it may have.
right.
I-
And that was one of the things I brought up in the meeting was I set the expectation that they may reject this, right?
Yeah.
They have every right to reject it. So, if they do, there's nothing we can do about that. And
Right.
so, I wanted to set that expectation with the select board. So, so that one's in process. Rice
So
Ave.
on,
Oh, go
can
ahead,
I go
Kate.
back to Summer Street for a minute?
Yep.
So I know you said we initially voted
Mm-hmm.
not, I just want to be clear, this committee voted unanimously against a truck
Right.
exclusion on Summer Street. That never changed.
Right.
The reason it brought before the select board last week was because a citizen sent 2 emails within a week apart to the select board and the traffic safety committee. And the select board took it up at their one meeting before our meeting and decided to go forward with it.
Yep.
We also have Brigham Street on this agenda every month.
Right.
And all we're doing by approving a truck exclusion on Summer Street is forcing more trucks down Brigham. And I can't imagine that the citizens of Brigham Street are going to be very happy about that.
Well,
And to be honest with you, being a part of this committee, and I'm sure everybody here agrees, we signed up and we take the time to review everything that is sent here. And I had to read about this in the Community Advocate, and that feels just a little bit backwards. So I feel the need to put that out there. I think that, you know, the select board felt very strongly about creating this committee to discuss traffic safety concerns and then completely disregarded the unanimous vote of this committee. So, you know, I get it that they want to appease the citizens that make the requests, but between Brigham Street and the center of town, I've got some serious concerns about how this is going to play out, and having a tractor trailer take a right turn from 135 onto Route 20 from the left turn lane when traffic to the right of him can take a left. I just can't imagine that that is an appropriate solution. And I don't know. I'm glad that the Mass DOT has to review it because it's on Route 20, because I just don't think that that is safe.
Yep.
But I wanted to put that out there because I was
Okay.
just a little upset reading about it in the newspaper.
Rachel.
I agree with the frustration, Kate. I totally get where you're coming from. The one point, because I did watch that meeting, the one point that I think Lisa Maselli brought up was the island at the end of Summer and 20 that I don't think was part of our discussion. And that is, so the road really narrows there. So that, I don't think that that was part of our discussion, that island there. So that sort of gave me pause. But I do have concerns because then, as you said, with Brigham, then that traffic gets redirected to Brigham. Then if we give the truck exclusion to Brigham, then it's School Street. So that whole area, when we start approving these in a vacuum, you know, the center of town really starts to have a significant impact. So I completely hear the frustration. Because we did have a significant discussion about it, but the island at the end of there was not something that I thought we had discussed, and that sort of, you know, that could be really difficult for a tractor trailer. The other question too for Scott is, it came up to, I know we're always looking at thresholds and the 5% threshold. Do we ever look at the width of the road and what, because that came up too, if 2 tractor trailers are on the road, you know, passing each other and the road can't handle from a width standpoint, is that something that we take into account? Because it didn't seem like that was something we had discussed as part of the discussion either.
Very rarely is roadway width a concern. I mean, the absolute minimum roadway width is 18 feet, which is ridiculous because it's smaller than 2 parking spaces. Summer Street, I believe, gets down to 20 feet, which is narrow, but you know, it's adequate for the vehicles to pass. Do you want to drive by one comfortably with the vertical stone wall on one side and a sidewalk on the other? No, it's uncomfortable. But the unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, fact is the vehicles will fit. I mean, Crawford Street's the same way. When you come up
Right. No, I know. I'm sure there are a lot of streets, and yeah.
And you know, it fits the can the roadway handle the vehicle component of the truck exclusion is driven by capacity. Do you have a culvert that has, you know, 10 inches of cover and it's corrugated metal and it doesn't meet the standards for H20 loading? That justifies a truck exclusion because the truck may crush the culvert. Very rarely is it roadway width from my experience.
Okay. Chris.
I just kind of wanted to echo what Kate had said. It's just I'm afraid to kind of start handing these requests out like candy in a sense, where we're just doing it because it's asked. Because I think if you do look at the Mass DOT guidelines, I mean it says pretty clearly that for those two type of roadways, a truck has to make lane to lane turns. It can't overtrack. And once you take into account that downtown area and how busy it gets, it's something either someone's building is going to get swiped, the pole is going to get knocked down, or I think someone said it too. You're going to be making a left turn from 135 onto 20, and you're going to end up under a tire, and that's just going to be a nightmare.
Well, and I assume that we'll hear back about Summer Street before we go further with Brigham Street. I mean, if the DOT doesn't approve the alternate route, then we can sort of put the kibosh on Brigham Street because we know it's going to be the same answer, correct?
It's not going to be our decision.
My expectation would be, my recommendation would be to not do counts on Brigham Street until after a Summer Street truck exclusion is accepted by DOT, posted, and enacted for, I don't know, 6 months. Takes a little while for the GPS to kick in, for them to capture it. And I'm willing to bet when your truck coming up 135 and the GPS is going to say take a right on Brigham, and you're going east on 20 because that's the shortest direction. And I would wait until after that takes effect before we do counts on Brigham Street to see what the effects are. I can't imagine it's going to take long for a truck driver stuck in the middle of town to say, probably should have taken a right before here.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and Kate, I feel your frustration, right? I was there in front of them while they were deliberating this in front of us, right? And the one thing we have to keep in mind is, unfortunately, we are an advisory board, right? We can only advise, we can't make decisions. I was actually chatting with somebody who is the chairman of the Traffic Safety Committee out in Salem, and he actually works at the MBTA with me, and they actually have full rights. So they actually make the decisions for the town instead of the select board. I think, I am fearful that, I hope what the select board decided comes through, right? And everything works out. I really do. I think we did a lot of deliberation on this. There is a fear that I don't think is unjustified, but there's also no facts behind it. So, and one of the things we wanted to bring up as well is that if you want to remove a heavy vehicle exclusion, it's even a harder process than putting one in, right? Because you have to wait for all of the, the accident data and the traffic data and everything else to come back all over again before you can remove it. So, to Chris's sort of point of, just handing these out, we need to be really careful. I think it did get brought up in the meeting by one of the select board members as well, that, if they want one on Brigham, that they should all start emailing as well. And I think that's sending the wrong message. I really do. But, again, we are an advisory board. So, all we can do is advise. We did our job. I think we did our job well. And, we'll wait and see what happens. That's all we can do. So if we're done with Summer Street, I do want to move on to Rice Ave, because that did get brought up as well. They want to, the select board wants to move forward on Rice Ave as well. There were some concerns brought up with that. I don't know if everyone saw the meeting or not. I want to make sure if they do want to do that we get counts on Winter Street as well, because Winter Street is going to have to be part of that. You can't have a truck coming down Winter Street, get to Whitney and not be able to go anywhere. There's nowhere for them to turn around at that point. So that definitely has to be part of it. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
Winter Street goes straight across into Rice.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
into Rice. So
Right.
right where
Yeah,
that house is,
definitely.
right at the corner there, with that stone wall that always gets hit. Right. You know, that's Winter Street coming into Whitney, and then Rice is on the other side.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's important to do both. There's going to be one because, like you said, there's already an exclusion on Whitney. Trucks can't turn around on Winter, so to provide them with some alternative.
Any other comments?
Refresh my memory. How far down Rice does this go? Does it go to, in my notes, I have it going down to Allen, or does it go all the way to Colburn?
It goes all the way. There were actually, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a traffic study on both sides of Rice.
Yeah, we did traffic counts on both segments of Rice Ave. Both met the 5% threshold. The thought is that it's, and I haven't delved into the data, but mostly service trucks, you know, box trucks, landscapers, oil delivery, those types. There were other roadways that were recommended for exclusions. Allen Street, the short section from Rice down to Hudson. Colburn from Hudson up to Barefoot, because then the truck has nowhere to go. And then Winter Street from Howard over to Whitney Street. So one truck exclusion on Rice Ave would snowball into Winter, Rice, segment of Allen, and all of Colburn. So it, you know, when you couple that with the truck exclusions that already exist on Whitney Street, that would almost be a truck excluded segment of Northborough.
It's hard to balance completely understanding why residents want truck exclusions, but also understanding that businesses still need to run and trucks need to drive on the roads for that to happen.
The challenge, if that truck exclusion was to go through, is every truck coming down Hudson Street toward downtown would end up taking a left onto Allen Street to get to East Main, because they can't take a right. They can't go under the aqueduct. They have to go left onto Allen Street up to East Main and then wherever their destination is. So, you know, shutting out an entire segment of town just concentrates a lot of traffic onto some other adjacent roadways. So it's a bit of a snowball.
And those roadways will be, you know, sending in their requests 6 months or a year from now. East Main will want one, and you know what I mean? So I struggle with this.
It definitely feels like it's starting to become like just throw a truck exclusion at every road in the area, and obviously that's not feasible, and it's like you said, it'll never work because businesses still need to run. But you know, as residents, and I know, you know, I've definitely aired out my frustration seeing some of the 18-wheelers that have no business coming down here on this side of Allen Street. But it definitely happens.
Yeah, I will say, you know, even on, you know, where I live on Whitney Street, I have, you know, to one side, I have a 5-ton heavy vehicle exclusion. To the other side, I have a bridge with a 6-ton limit. And I can guarantee you every morning I see semis going back and forth on Whitney Street, right? It happens. But Kate, exactly to your point, right? As the traffic safety committee, we have to look at all traffic, right? And that includes, you know, we want businesses in town. If you want businesses in town to help with the, you know, the taxes and everything else, unfortunately, this is a part of it, right? They need to be able to do their business. And, you know, so it is a fine line that we try to walk.
I guess one question I have, Scott, if we can somehow prove that the trucks that are using our road are using it to cut through to get back to a business in Marlboro. Is there anything we could do about that? I understand, like, people need to make deliveries around town and whatnot, but some of the trucks that are cutting, like you said, through down Bartlett, East Main, they're leaving the Amazon, and the other facilities over there from Marlboro and using it to access probably 290, I'm assuming. Is there anything we can do about that? Or is it more just we have to talk to the businesses?
I think the best approach would be for this committee, my recommendation would be when we do get these requests, don't simply get does it meet the criteria 5%, but what vehicles are pushing that criteria? Is it, a landscape truck and trailer with, an oil truck and, a dual wheel, dump body? Or is it actually an articulated vehicle, a tractor trailer? Because that's what people want to get off their roads.
Right.
Not many people are concerned that the landscaper is driving by with a leaf body and a chipper behind him.
Right.
That would be probably more valuable information for this committee to evaluate the whether it's warranted or not.
Well, and that was, when you look at the Summer Street traffic there, I don't think there was less than 10 tractor trailers. That all the heavy vehicles were less than 6 axles. I think most of them were 95% of them were. And who knows how much of it was local traffic.
Well, plus don't forget, you've got the Harvey facility right there on the other side of Main Street, right? How many of them are cutting across to get to the Harvey facility and, instead of coming out all the way out onto 20 and then making a right?
Most of the concerns on Brigham Street were from one resident or two was waste management. Well, they're not driving tractor trailers, they're driving, trash trucks and, dumpster haulers. Dumpster haulers are very loud when they hit manholes and what very, very few potholes we have in town. So
Yes.
That feels like editorializing, Scott.
no.
Just wait till springtime.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on to more HCVE. The Lincoln Street, Pleasant Street.
Yep.
Scott, I'll let you give an update on that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that was approved for ARPA funding, $18,000 for the engineering study for both roadways. The work is underway. I would fully expect the reports to be positive and supportive of a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion. Once I receive those, which I would expect to get after the holidays, we'll just take the next step. Have this committee consider the reports and move forward onto the select board if you choose so.
We will actually get, in addition to the 5% counts, those sort of how many are tractor trailers and how many are landscape trucks and blah, 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 blah.
Yes. Yep. I will have that in the report.
Good times. Thanks.
Yep.
And just as a reminder for everyone in the public who might not, realize, in the DPW budget, there's only budget for one count per year, right? And so that's why we sort of try to keep a running list of, the priority list that we have in town, of the ones we want to do, or the ones we want to get done. So just as a reminder to everyone, that might be watching that, we don't have, Scott unfortunately doesn't have the funds to be able to do counts all throughout town. So we sort of have to prioritize what we do per year. So
I'm going to take one for the team and ask a really stupid question.
No stupid questions, only stupid answers.
So an HCVE is done by weight, as you were saying. So to make sure the weight, the road can hold the structure. Hold the truck. When I'm looking at how we classify vehicles, we do it by axle. So when do is there a 5-ton and a 2.5-ton? Are there two different type of HCVEs? And how does that line up with the axles per truck, per HCVE?
There's a truck exclusion on Upper Whitney Street. Bill referred to it earlier. There's a bridge over the railroad tracks past Coolidge before you get into the industrial zone with Steris is and Santa Antos and all that. That bridge has structural challenges to it, and the limitation on it is not related to the number of axles, but to the weight. So if we were to do a truck exclusion on a local road, let's say it's Summer Street, I'm sorry, School Street down by the tree farm, by the golf course, because that bridge was found to be structurally compromised, we could do a truck exclusion there. We just send the report to Mass DOT. This bridge cannot handle anything over, 5 ton or 5 tons. They approve it. That's one mechanism for a truck exclusion. The other one is what we've been talking about all along here, over 5% number of axles. That's the other type. I would not need a traffic count on a structurally compromised culvert or bridge. All I need to
Okay.
know is that one truck could fall through into the river.
Okay. Thank you.
And that was a great question, Rachel.
Oh, thank you. Humor me, Scott.
Okay. And I think we've talked about Brigham Street, so I'm going to leave that one there. At this point, I'm going to open it up to any public comment, which there's nobody in the attendees list, so we can go through that pretty quick. Approval of November 12th, 2024 minutes. Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes? Any questions, amendments? If not, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Kate, I didn't hear you. I don't know if you're on
Oh.
mute or something. Oh, now I hear you.
Can you hear me now? Motion
Yeah.
to approve November minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second to Brian. Roll call vote. Rachel,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Chris?
I was not in attendance, so
Okay, so abstain.
Yep.
Brian?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so those are approved. Next meeting is January 14th. And before we adjourn really quick, Scott, I have one item to ask about. I noticed over the past couple weeks that I drive my kids into school every morning, and the lights at the safety zone at Algonquin are not on, the ones facing Route 20. Are you aware of that at all?
I am.
Okay.
We had our maintenance vendor go out there and take a look at those lights. They're repairing them. The RRFBs on South Street at Assabet Park, those are no longer functional. They will need to be replaced. Welcome to the world of low bid Massachusetts. And the one at Northgate, Longfellow, and South Street has been repaired. So just so the committee is aware, we have many of these devices. We're adding them continuously. We have a lot of them on order, and they are electrical devices that require maintenance and repair. So, for example, the one at Assabet on South Street, that's probably going to be a $10,000 replacement. So, that one we have appropriated per year will go toward replacing that existing one as opposed to putting a new one in. And that's, the more we get, the more likely that's going to be the case going forward.
And you have a great team there working on them. I know. So
It's a high priority location.
Yeah.
No,
Assabet Park.
yeah.
no, for,
Yeah, I
for real.
agree.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Would the $8,000 be better spent maintaining that one or putting a new one somewhere that frankly might not have as much of an impact?
Yeah,
Right.
You're right, Brian. Absolutely, 100%.
And then one thing that I do want to put on the and on the agenda for maybe for next month as well is an update on the 7 that we have that were approved by the select board and where we are on those.
So the design for each one of the locations is complete. We issued the design, which included sketches at each location with some grades and limits and quantities. We provided that to our paving contractor this year. They provided us a change order for construction of the wheelchair ramps, curbing, as well as installation of the RFBs. That change order has been approved. The equipment has been on order for, I don't know, 6 weeks or so. And when that equipment comes in, my expectation is the contractor will get out there and get that work done as weather permits.
I was going to say, do they do that kind of work over the winter, or would they wait for springtime for that?
It depends. It's really challenging. If it was not on the road edge, it's easy to do flat work, concrete like pads. But you put a brand new concrete pad in, it's curing for 7 days, and we get a foot of snow. You got to put a new pad in. So the location doesn't lend itself to snow removal, unfortunately.
Right. Okay. Great. Unless anyone has anything else to bring up to the board, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Okay. Second.
Second,
Okay. Roll call vote. Rachel,
aye.
Brian,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Kate. I think you said aye. Didn't.
Aye.
There you go.
It's late.
And I'm an aye. You wanted to keep us in suspense, I know. I'm an aye as well. Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays, and see everyone next
You
year.
too.